Hello friends, it's me, and today let's cook on the road, literally. Let's check out food theory. Can you actually cook an egg on the sidewalk? What? From the food theorist. Together, let's go. Let's check out.
It is over 100 degrees. I'm locked outside of Jason's house, and I'm gonna cook some eggs on the sidewalk.
Why Jason's house?
This is not gonna end well.
No.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, the show that's so hot you can cook an egg on it. And that,
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory.
my friends, is exactly what we're talking about today. It's a common phrase you may have heard at some point in your life if you've lived somewhere that gets unbearably hot in the summer. It's so hot, I can cook an egg on the sidewalk. The question is that really possible? It feels like you would need to have apocalyptic levels of heat to accomplish that. Luckily for us over on the West Coast, we have apocalyptic levels of heat right now. So I decided to step outside into the blistering sun rays to test this out for myself. But in classic YouTube fashion, I can't just make an egg and call it a day. No, I'm gonna make an entire breakfast dish. Eggs, toast, and bacon. Now, I didn't want to be that guy and post up on a public sidewalk with a bunch of eggs and bacon, so I asked Jason if I could use his driveway to cook on. Let's just say he wasn't super ecstatic about the idea, so I decided I'd wait until he went out for errands, grabbed Amy, and started the clock. After all,
Oh, come on! That's weird! Let's literally cook on the road.
ticking clock is perfect for raising the stakes. All right, so first and foremost, we're gonna get started on our bacon. Now, it's gonna need the longest amount of time because it needs the most amount of heat. So what we're gonna do is put 2 slices of bacon directly on the pavement and 2 slices of bacon in a little tin foil baking dish. And hopefully one of these will cook. So let's get started. The aluminum foil dish will help serve as a comparison here. The metal of the dish should reflect heat from the sun and act as a sort of frying pan without actually being a frying pan. I'm only doing it with the bacon because of how much more heat it needs than the toast and eggs. Speaking of toast, okay, so the bacon is down and it's hopefully slowly cooking. And before we get to the eggs, there's one more component of this breakfast that we need, and that is good old toast. So what we're gonna do is spray both sides of our toast and lay it down in the sun. Now, hopefully, we'll actually get a little bit of a toast as opposed to just bread getting stale. We're gonna leave this here and go over to our eggs. So while the bacon and toast get going, it's time to grab some grade A eggs and get cracking. And while we wait for that to heat up, let's look at where this whole thing started. If I asked you to guess when was the first time someone proposed that the sidewalk was hot enough to fry an egg, when would you say? The 70s? The 80s? The 90s? Correct! 1890s. On June 11th, 1899, physician Dr. Francis Henry Wade wrote a column in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution titled How to Keep Cool, where he said that the breaks around Atlanta that summer were hot enough to fry eggs. This is supposedly the earliest written record of people wanting to have their eggs with a side order of pavement. But unfortunately, old Doc Wade didn't actually test his hypothesis. Shame, shame, I know your name. But fast forward to the 1930s and we get our first documented example of people giving it a go. Apparently in 1933, actor Pat Rooney, not to be confused with his father Pat Rooney, got into a disagreement with his son Pat Rooney about how long it would take to fry an egg on the hot New York City sidewalk.
Okay, it's a bit confusing. Pat Rooney the senior, Pat Rooney, and Pat Rooney Jr. What happens after the junior? Junior?
Senior said it would just take 3 minutes, and his son said, bet, or whatever the slang would have been at the time. Indubitably? You betcha, daddy-o. Anyway, someone then snagged this picture of them and 2 onlookers in the middle of Times Square. Apparently hot enough to fry an egg, but not too hot for suit and ties. The 30s were a wild time, man. But as it turned out, according to legend, Pat Senior was right, and the egg was cooked in under 3 minutes.
Wait, I want to see the picture, I want to see the picture.
Too hot for suit and ties? The 30s...
Why can't they do the Asian squat? Why can't they do that?
Were a wild time.
See, they cannot do the Asian squats.
But as it turned out, according to legend, Pat Senior was right and the egg was cooked in under 3 minutes. Which, if that's the case, I better go check in on my egg. So the first one was disastrous. The white went everywhere. I am starting to see a little bit of color there, weirdly enough. But we've made this ring to keep most of the egg white in. Hopefully this will work. So here goes nothing. Egg number 2. Come on. Come on. Come on. That did not work.
It's not.
That did not work at all.
Well, shoot. That is not what I expected. I guess it's just not hot enough here in LA to make this work. How hot does it need to be to fry an egg anyway? Way hotter, I found out. It turns out in order to properly cook an egg according to the American Egg Board, a thing I am simultaneously glad and sad exists, eggs need to reach a temperature between 144 and 158 degrees Fahrenheit, or between 62 and 70 degrees Celsius. I know I made a joke about it before, but this is literal levels of apocalyptic heat. The official world record for the hottest temperature ever recorded was 134.1 degrees Fahrenheit in Death Valley in July 1913. But we don't need the air to reach that 150 degree mark in order to cook the egg. We just need the sidewalk to get that hot, right? I mean, if you've ever stepped out barefoot on concrete or asphalt, you know that the ground can get way hotter than the surrounding environment. You can see on this chart, temperatures on the cement, the kind of material sidewalks and Jason's driveway are made of, can reach temperatures of 125 degrees on a 95 degree afternoon. Blacktops top out at a skin-melting 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And on a day like this, where the ambient temperature is 102 degrees, the two surfaces should at least get close enough to the temperature we need to cook the eggs. Question is, why do we need our eggs to get that hot? Can't I just keep them in a lower heat for longer and get the same effect? Not really. And to understand that, we need to zoom into our delicious egg and look at the science of egg cooking. Eggs are made up
Microscope time! Let's go!
of about 40 different proteins, which is why eggs are such a good source for dietary protein. These proteins are able to bump into and slosh around with other proteins in the eggs when they're liquid before you fry them up. But once you heat them to that magic temperature around 150 degrees Fahrenheit, the bonds inside these proteins start to break down and they start to untangle, a process called denaturing. Once that happens, the proteins all start to bond together, forming a web-like matrix of proteins. This is called coagulation, and it's why our cooked eggs solidify. And here lies the issue for our sidewalk sizzling. If the eggs don't get to that magic 150 degree mark, then none of that happens. But none of that matters if I can't get—
Come on, Gordon Ramsay, let's keep it wholesome, let's keep it family friendly, no F words, don't use the vulgarity word, no curse words, no bad words, okay?
the egg to stay in one spot, which brings us to egg number 3.
All right, so mistake number 1 was agreeing to do this episode. Mistake number 2 was wearing all black on a day that it is 102 degrees outside. Mistake number 3 is whatever this is. But hopefully this will stop the egg from running out. This little contraption that we have invented here. And by we, I mean me. I did this all on my own, no help whatsoever.
Hey!
And it's actually working. There's minimal slippage, and it's actually staying in place.
Huzzah! With the egg finally staying in one spot and not just running all over the place, the proteins will actually be able to bond with one another in the heat. Or at least they should. The other X factor in this dish is the bacon. Like eggs, bacon needs to be cooked to a temperature of at least 145 degrees to avoid all sorts of nasty bacteria like salmonella. I should clarify that that's internal temperature. So just having the cement or the asphalt almost get to that won't cut it. That's why leaving it out for the entire 2 hours on both surfaces is crucial to get anywhere near close to edible bacon. Half an hour later and the strips are definitely starting to cook. The fat is sort of rendering and the meat is actually kind of browning on the driveway. The heat was only getting more intense, so it was time to get cracking on egg number 4, aka the asphalt egg.
Ooh, okay. This is a lot hotter than the pavement on the driveway. The asphalt, like, hurts to the touch, so let's hope that this works out.
And hope is definitely still hanging on, especially with how the bacon on the street's been cooking.
What we see here in the bacon is that it is much more cooked than the bacon that was on the pavement. It's drier, the fat has been rendered. You can actually kind of see it's not as like white anymore, it's a little more translucent. So it has been cooked. It's been
wait, shout out to the shirts, Naruto shirts.
Dehydrated because of how long it's been out here, but the temperature on the asphalt is clearly much higher than the pavement. Even sitting on it, my butt is burning, whereas over there, like, it was hot, but it wasn't uncomfortable. So I'm thinking this might actually cook.
Oh, and I'm cooking, chef, in so many different ways.
Yes, let him cook!
melt right off the bone in this heat? Food theory for another time. Meanwhile, I cracked the final egg next to my bacon and toast using our little plate contraption to keep it all together. This way, we have 3 different locations to ensure we have eggs with unobstructed sunlight. We need every leg up we can get since we're doing this au naturel. I say that because technically there's a rule book for this that we could consult. Every year since 1983, there's been a competition held to see who can cook the best sidewalk egg, smack dab in the middle of the Arizona desert along historic Route 66. The small town of Oatman, Arizona holds its annual egg fry competition every 4th of July. And by the way, when I say small town, I mean small town. 102 people small. I've seen more people in a tent. In fact, if you go to Oatman on any given day, you'll probably find more wild donkeys walking around the town than people. Actually, one of those donkeys, Walter, is the honorary mayor of the town. It's a literal jackass politician. And let me tell you, they take their sidewalk egg frying seriously. According to their rules, you can actually construct frying pans from aluminum or even a freaking solar oven like this. That oven actually won the 2010 contest and got up to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that's totally fine and dandy by their rules, but to me, that seems a bit like cheating. It's like saying you're gonna cook dinner for your date and it's really just you heating up a frozen lasagna in the oven. So no fancy solar ovens, just good old-fashioned ground for me. But I'll definitely come to regret that decision after checking back in on the eggs.
Oh, that is so weird. That is so weird. Get in here, actually. So, it's actually like congealed, definitely like solidified. It's not cooked, but it like feels like a jellyfish. Ooh, and the yolk is like hard. It's like crunchy. This is so disgusting. I would never want to eat this, but I can't stop touching it.
The slow and low cooking ended up making the whites of the egg feel more like a jellyfish than anything else. It's still completely transparent.
SpongeBob jellyfish.
Meaning the proteins haven't fully denatured and rebonded, but they're at least partially on their way there. The first three
To be fair, this sort of thing can be like quite interesting and quite creative, interesting to the kids to play with.
eggs that we cracked, though, had something else going on that was interesting. The yolk had completely hardened on top, while the rest was still completely liquid underneath.
The top of the yolk is just hard. It feels like the world's best like pimple that you want to pop. I'm not gonna do it, but like I really want to.
The yolk pimple is a result of the sun dehydrating the top layer of the egg, so it solidifies and creates almost like a protective layer for the rest of the egg underneath. See, the yolk of the egg is actually 50% solids with proteins, fats, and minerals, and 50% water. That's why egg number 2, whose yolk broke when I cracked, formed an entire hard layer that covered the rest of the egg underneath, while the other 2 only hardened in the center where the yolk is. And I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't resist popping the pimple on one of them. I know that may be super gross, but it was so oddly satisfying. But that meant bad news overall for the experiment. Our best bet was to let everything cook uninterrupted for the remaining hour that we had.
All right, so it's been 2 hours, and that is the egg whites are a lot more congealed than the others.
Unfortunately, a lot more was still way too uncooked to scrape off the ground easily. Hopefully, the other eggs are a different story.
Looking at our first 4 eggs, it's much closer to like a steamed egg than it is a fried egg or even a cooked one.
Steaming is exactly what happened here. See, the biggest difference between the concrete and asphalt that we use for this experiment and, say, a stove is that the heat source on your stove comes from below and constantly, and the pan you normally use is a great conductor of heat. Concrete has none of those features. It's heated up from above by the sun, and it sucks at conducting heat. So even though it was close to the temperature we needed to cook our eggs when we cracked them open, as soon as the eggs touched the ground, they actually lowered the temperature of the concrete and cooled it. Without a heat source to bring it back up from underneath or even the sides, the eggs had no chance of cooking. And hours of dry heat slowly dehydrated the moisture out of the top layer of the egg, leaving it to steam up inside, which meant that the egg whites were almost completely gone by the time our 2 hours were up. Luckily, our final egg managed to not totally evaporate in the sun.
So clearly the bottom was able to cook a little bit better. That's kind of a success, I would say.
Wahoo! Count it! I mean, sure, the whites were gone and it's totally inedible, but it was cooked enough to scrape off the driveway while still being runny underneath. Without any aids like a solar oven or the aluminum foil pans the mad scientists in Oatman, Arizona use, this might be the closest we get to frying an egg on the sidewalk. I'll take that as a dub. And it's a double dub because the bacon actually turned out edible-ish.
I'm gonna do something I'm gonna instantly regret, but honestly, I need to see how this tastes. So 5-second rule, 2-hour rule, same thing.
Huh?
That was gnarly. But let's try out the other bacon. Honestly, that works. It's chewy. I'm gonna take that as a win.
My stomach might need to be pumped after eating literal street meat, but I've accomplished my goal against all odds. We've got our dish all ready to go.
We have a nice crispy toast, nice chewy, non-jerky bacon, and some jerky bacon if that's what you're into. We've made breakfast in 2 hours on Jason's driveway.
So there
The
you
thing is, it's no longer breakfast. It will become like brunch, lunch already by then.
have it. While getting a diner-worthy fried egg on the sidewalk may be almost impossible, I accomplished what I set out to do and made the world's slowest eggs and bacon in the most inconvenient way possible. But I did it all with nothing but the ground and my naive optimism. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta go clean up before Jason gets back and lie down after having that bacon. But, as always, remember, that's just a theory. A food theory! Bon appetit. And if you feel like you've been lied to for years about how easy it is to fry an egg on the sidewalk, brace yourselves, because you've been lied to about vegetables. Click the link to go watch me unravel that conspiracy, and as always, I'll see you next week.
Well, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in my next video. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit. And I hope to see you all in my next video. Thank you so much. Subscribe. But truly, thank you all so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.